on the 2nd of June 2022. This is not to, as it is, remind any families of their pain, but 7 years ago to the dawn, a disaster happened. So behind me, what you can see is Vienna City, and directly opposite Vienna City is the gas or fuel station where the many lives were lost. I have come here the dawn to the disaster happening, and here I sought to speak to a few people who work around here, mainly night workers. My information is that a lot of the workers have been moved on from here, and so not a lot of them are around to grant interviews. But I also heard that for those who work nights around here, a lot of them during the night hear voices or see shadows. I'm going to go and speak to this young woman who sells Indomie. She may be serving a customer, but I'll steal the moment to speak to her briefly. I've already spoken to her. She's already given me some information, but I need her to confirm what she's told me just a few minutes ago. I may not necessarily be focused on her for the interview the entire time, but at least I'll manage to grab something of her, and then we can move on. Why you know how you say? Yeah, no, you know how time bends on my own. From 6 o'clock here. 2 a.m., 6 p.m., 2 a.m. Yeah, now a book if you pay 10 or why am I have to say? Oh, I can't say one. At 4 o'clock, I have this back. My father can lie. I can that, maybe I what's not best 7 years of disaster? You see what I do, you know, I should have. Yeah, my, it is a weird no hand. Put it in me, and then it is saying, oh, I don't get it.
So that's the scene of the disaster that occurred 7 years ago. This was just yesterday. So Alan went back there in the night to have a feel of the locale, and he was speaking to a lady who sells noodles there at night, and he's trying to get a feel of exactly how it is at that time. We can speak to Alan right now, who is actually at the site of the disaster, to give us a sense of what he was asking the lady, what she said, and what's going on at the location right now. This is GTV Breakfast. We'll go to Alan right now. Alan, good morning. Welcome to the show. Tell us what is going on at Circle.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for coming to us at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle. Indeed, it is the date to the disaster that claimed over 150 lives. Really, a look back on that day, it started as any other normal day, especially on the 2nd with some rain showers. And then fast forward to the dawn of that particular day, there was a little rain also, but then things turned the other way on the 3rd of June, when after work it was still raining. And so for the many who took shelter at the fuel station, the Goil fuel station, a great majority of them were there to shelter from the rain as it was getting heavier and heavier. The rest of it was what we know to be some theories, as well as some that till today the Ghana National Fire Service has not been able to accurately say it is, except that to suggest it may have come from that. I came here last night to interact with some people who were here or who worked here but my information before that, sorry, I've just been joined by a survivor, a victim of the accident, but I'll speak to him very shortly. My information was that for those who are working here, especially the one I spoke to yesterday, some of the things I heard which got me somehow a bit frightened was that especially between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., you hear voices of people screaming, but if you should turn around or look around, you will not find them. In fact, one person confirmed to me yesterday, she sells here, and what she told me was that between those hours, you sometimes see people coming out of this particular premises, the Goyles Filling Station, but you only see them and in a flash they're gone. You can't see them again. I asked if she doesn't get worried or scared. She said, well, we've seen it all, we've heard it all, and so for us, it really isn't about fear, it is about survival, and so we work here, we serve our customers. Behind me, if you can see, and if you have the benefit of our aerial shots, Jerry Decker controlling the aerial shots for us on the drone, you have still remains of the destruction, cars, lorries that got caught up in the disaster. I will speak to my friend who survived the accident and find out 7 years on, how has he coped, pardon me, and what has life been beyond that. We'll speak in the Twi dialect. When we're done, I will do my best to bring us some interpretation in the English language.
Kasim Suraj.
Kasim, Mfiensuni ena atoyerenchem ya eto wo man Ghana nyina no esi wa ha na ehene potena na wo saada no
Bacho na me was station bako ena me ne me wife ene me ba ne me bra ena se yekofi yekonima yedu na me kitaka me du ase na ka no flade ena esi form ena be gina filling station ma se ndi preocupa na me wife ka chem se me hwe me chi eja o me ndane me chi kura ena ja to me tisu me hu hwe biom me nso betiti me no na me da atichem kura
me pacho obo oyere ne obadin oyere ne oba no omho asem te sen
omina mawu mefrim
sada no a
da sada na omu me brand ye hu ne body kura me ban so ye hu ne body me wife ye hu ne body
me gina omaiga na nyina na mu na mama ohyeden na afi me yenhwe enu akire no eden ni nia memfa no se psychological counseling a ebeboa wo ama nia ebinum ofa saade mu onya flashbacks no wonsa kan osu se aboa wo
mpacho fitisatam ebedu se midaso say midaso wa yaresa eko up and down me call review or 37 me surgery back 20 surgeon so we ni bebre so na wa won dey aba form miti nkasese no yi nkase ndi ama ti se ekrunde eko ye no almost 1 year ni na me dase dressing but ti se akọ be miti no headgear na be hye no scan ni amba ko ye headgear ba review no so scanner mi ba ko ton drone ebi ni on ti ama miti ko review ndi awon hospital na mbo tia me medical bills last 3 years ni medical bills na mo tia no na mi bi se mo say compensation minim say medical bills nso ye tia ma ni pa compensation ni na say awon kire nko awon di ni o se mba ko adwuma ndi mi gusu sire mi say aban wa boa de ahwe mapom di de but say la nda so hia say mo ma mi ska mo edu a mi so met ma hwe mo ada hwe ma yaresa up and down
Kasim, we the mesro, we are comfortable say ubeyi utri ho atre yen.
Okay. Me comfortable me because the way I do the first in the obi oka bandage cry wom tikwa me, but the way I do the makasa sa I be say ibia ntro bi na metwa say me di dem awom ti ya yin kasa efimiti anya ntro o yere dia met me ya
Me pacho yi ma me hwe.
yutin ya yin kasa efimiti yin kasa efimiti
Me da say Kasim,
ntimi ko ni pam so say bibi committee sia mentimi ya hwi because me da kura na bibi anya me da kura sentence kwa na nkase kura timi ewo because bibi wa yen yi nyina eyi nkakra ndi anya easy up to sia na nkase na encha da inform ye
Kafui, sorry, Kasim, me from my colleague Kradin. Me da wase se oni yen edin komo. Me san ba won champion na ma na me honya ade mra sisia. Kaf, we look forward to speaking to the chairman of the Victims Association, chairman of the Victims and Survivors Association, but his heart is chased up with a particular assignment, and so he is not here ready to speak to us, but preparations are ongoing to mark the anniversary of the disaster. It really is a very sad and a very humbling situation, but I ask one question: have we learned any lessons from this, and what are we doing as a nation to reach out to people like Kasim, who still lives with the scars of that day? Take it back, Kafui. Thank you very much for joining us.
Alan, before you go, just a quick translation of what transpired between you and Kasim. What did he say happened to him, for those who don't understand Twi?
Right, so I asked Kasim where he was on that day, and he explained he is a driver who was driving from one station and had to use this particular road to make his way to Nima. In the car was his wife, his child, and his brother. Because of the huge amount of water that was seated here on this road, his car got flooded and could no longer drive, and so he himself and the people with him in his car took shelter at this fuel station. While he was here, his wife just suddenly screamed and said, "Kasim, look behind you, there's fire." He didn't even turn, and his hair caught fire, and so he somehow lost consciousness. He woke up on a hospital bed. I asked him, so mentioning his wife, his brother, and his child, where are they today? And he explained his wife died, his child also died, his brother also died. Sadly, the body of his child and his brother were never found, but his wife at least was found, and she was given a proper burial. I went on further to ask him about support from the system as well as from the state, and it's a shame to say, Kaf, that his narration almost got me coming down, and so I had to really control it. Very emotionally, his hospital bills were paid as compensation for what happened to him, and so beyond his hospital bills, nothing came to him. He still lives with scars and sores from the disaster, and he goes to 37 for psychological counseling in order to be able to cope. He's unable to go among people, especially where there is a crowd. I asked him if he's comfortable to show me the scars on his head, and he took them out. I'm not sure if you got the actual detail, but being close to him, I saw huge bumps on his head, and he told me these were taken, the skull, the plates on his skull were taken out in order to treat him, and they've never been able to put them back, and so he was supposed to be wearing a headgear, but it is so expensive that he hasn't been able to pay for it, and there's no support, and so even medication sometimes becomes a problem, and because of that he isolates himself just so that nothing drops on his head to injure him. Even while he's asleep, he is careful what pillows he used just so that he doesn't wake up with pain.
So that's his skull, and he was referring to bits of the skull that had been moved around to take care of his injuries, and he requires a form of headgear to protect his head. And he doesn't have the means, and so it's quite tough for him. He says even sleeping is a problem because he has to arrange his head in such a way that he doesn't cause further injury to himself. And so I'm sure this is just one of many people who are living with horrific injuries as a result of this twin disaster that occurred on the 3rd of June 2015. I cannot even begin to imagine the kind of pain, not just physical pain, but the emotional pain, and then just the memories of the people that he alone has lost. 3 relatives, a wife, a daughter, and a brother.
I have come back to speak to a couple more people about what they knew, where they were, what happened. I'll speak to Suraj Kasim. I'll speak to Kasim, but before I go to him, let me speak to one man who was also here on that day to pick up his views and what he saw on that day. And then I'll go to Kasim and continue where we left off with what for him or to him, and what he would like us or what he would like the state to do for him in such a regard. Good morning, Aja.
Morning.
Mpacho apomo.
Yami adumaye.
Aja me pacho ene ye mfie nson pepepe a atoyere ncham yi ebeto yen. Sada esi na we he.
Okay, point of correction. Me a disease father. Na mu adwuma mu. Nso no to anopa. No so kɔ na adwuma. Nti so no etoya nwumre no so na so mu. Nti me de na mu adwuma mu nti no me nim say nsu to. But echire na me te say yesi igya bi so ato. Na me dwen because my father no, I don't know where he was at that time. And you know, me friend, can me say me baran, but so now the flood was too much for me. Into me say me kufi. The next morning, very unfortunately, me nya call from my wife say insuna for me bano. Eko. Into me insunu eto no enefa na kwada no.
Ba ha no pay no or ye who say why you're very engaged with activities going on. Uyi say eno e kan wo say edo ba ko ye no den ni nia unim about support for omo a saa ade eto om.
Okay, me da say. Me kan okunde yakumbi pa na ni American ni say Satam na enye aban we na ewo so no NDC government ema wo ma omo nkrofo ewu ye no omo ma ebin muska ye no say ye die ka akiri nti yo mo ma nyeske ni bia mayem nti Benin government ewo ho na Benin ye ti say Benin government abed donate sika bi say yemfa mayen nti sa sika no mpo ye kun hu ntokwa for so long and ye copy or nadmo and nadmo director chere say oh no kre sika bi wo ho sa
Mr. Sechi me patropa mami 1 second me sign aba wo bio mami ni Sechi Ira Sechi on ye chairman for the victims and survivors ma me no enkasa quickly Ira Sechi me da sepa say wa beken yensa me makwaba
nso me da masemi ni obe ma megemo so
me pacho minya nti yese da no a ayini si no wankasa so wo pra bi na ehe na wo na ehe potin na
station animal
na ye adwuma wa ha
me pacho menya adwuma wa ha
den na do ba ha
me pacho me de bi no ne ba esenka ye peba bi aye den agina na case ni beto ye ha no
nti ehe na apply
me pacho me that time de na me wo machine na pomp petrol ye de hye ka mu pomp petrol no be me te fire nti me pie aba be hweba bi a fire ni free because that time no mo ye fire na aba nsuru bi wo filling station na chi wo omo na no mo wo soro ho no me ye fire nti ye pie aba be hwe na eje eja ni hyiaye
me da say wo hwe victim support ho asem ayete say
Oh, me patch enye kura.
I'm going back to Kasim and then I'll be speaking to Kasim. Kasim is a survivor and a victim of the disaster that occurred here or happened here 7 years ago. Kasim, akwa babiu, udi kan katre me say na support biya and share that ni homa. Then na pese ka woman yama.
De mi se o ma be yama mi se mi ha mboa mi be hwe mi yare. Ni mboa mi be hwe mi busiafo. Because still me tisi no me here say me protect me ti ansa na ma hwe mo yare so because me da so call reviews and I head gear so no boy din
me da say Kasim sabri we adwuma
pacho na me driver ni
alright me san ba ho bim sisi ma me nko sechi another be mirror ma memra wo mu ho na o bo me amane bi say Benin government edi sika bi buy ma udi akire eko nadmo eden ni si
me na me di akire ye nyina ye di akire ko e
mo ko eden ni si
ye ko papa no gitu mu Mr. Jima Prempeh gitu mu say yes ye di sika bi aba enti no ombedi ho dwuma na omdi sika no amaye enti ye no kre omdi ho sika omdi ho dwuma ema omdi Brazil sika no ema yen
na omo disbezi ye sen na ankrankra bi ensa kan ye ananse omo hwe sen na wepra ananse sen na
okay o sen na wepra edi siska o be unya eni wo be wu soso no o no so nia unya na ne wo mni se sika no previous government no say wo onipa wu no ye be ma wo sika na wo de sie ufun ewia na ya compensation but yen de ne de amanisa
enti omo mam sika sie ifunu de na omo mam compensation bia
me sie mi fun be 3-4 years ansa na me sika me sika
tese omo ama on de be sie no mpo engo se wa wo sie wa de wie ye na enu achi compensation no so
enu achi compensation no me hunu se sebi compensation because amano obi na edi sika no fi amano ne say yemfa mre yen
me da say me pacho compensation ana say ni obde ma say fasi ufun na ekosi sen
mama 10,000
Ghana cedis
yes.
na eno na enso hwe
enso hwe na wa wo hwe say nipa ewu na sebi onya abofra 25 years me fi say ebi wom.
We've been joined by another victim of the disaster, and we're going to find out how that affected him and how he's picked up his life until now. Jam Pacho Marche. Me Pacho, onu beka mbrofa na onu beka kasabe. Enkran, okay. Numa mingabu oyu adwan ko bafata wo here bi ene. Gbile ni neke ochina na ba shana wo. No mi engbo yo.
Me police station bi ene no.
O fa na mi no twu e bi.
Mi driver jime bi.
Te neka ochina na shana bo haten.
Ni eji bile to mo 5:30 mi. Numo fito mo e shwan ene fiu. O fe we police station no ta bi. O twa graft police station na chake o yele. O ke ni ngo ne ni e ba fi mi ni e huole ya. She before dani naka flare baba ona police station bi naka ame pompe 40 e che ni wo ya we ya ke 40 no ke fi na ke ngo ne fioli
no me ko ke 40 ye here otun ni e pompe e wo te fe ton le 40 ni yo here
wo yo bi e wo ka mi ni tun ni e fi to mo wo pete ame wo yo fuel bi e wo pack lole bi e no wo le no ni station ni ya no police station e tun ni e bi e you can year ne 23 years ne dani man e ba operate bi e wo ye bi e taliba
e wo te e affect bo haten
oh ni eji mi ina ni niku ni fuele ba no emi in force ke mako politan ni mabuna kan wenchu ni yo ni ni mabuti jeme shini ya dom ko li jeme gbe ni wala kala spi chu ese le nyenu en wa ke ba bi e la ke no ko ni ba fi ke tanka ni ni le mole ke la ni ba ide che yen bi fla ke no ko be ni ma fi
bo e wo no say o nation compensation no
oh in nation no shi compensation la wo je no ji wo shika
oh fine no. And so that's another victim who's just spoken to me and said even though he was compensated, he feels that wasn't what was supposed to have come to him. Finally, just before we go, I mentioned earlier how preparations are underway to mark this anniversary or this memorial of the June 3rd disaster some 7 years ago. We're still out here, we're keeping our eyes on the ground, we're still speaking to victims and survivors, and we're also speaking to families who were affected one way or the other to find out thus far whether indeed some lessons have been learned and whether this has also led to some change in attitude and behavior. Thank you very much, Kafui. Take it back from me.
Before you go, just a couple of quick questions. How much was the compensation the chap received? And then give us, there was a mention of Benin. What was that all about? Some money from Benin. I want to know in English. Or since we heard it in Twi, I want to know for those who don't understand the Benin factor and then the compensation that was given the guy.
All right, so Kafui, speaking to him, he lost a son in the disaster, a 25-year-old son who was washed away by the waters. As the events unfold, they needed to bury their dead. And so NADMO reached out to them and they were made to understand that if they bury their dead, there would be some compensation, first of all, to take care of the burial and also some compensation to help them get their lives back together, whatever losses they have suffered. He mentioned how that compensation was not necessarily generated by the government of Ghana and that it was donated of Benin, and so they followed that donation all the way to NADMO, where they were made to understand how it was going to be disbursed. And in that disbursement, he received 10,000 3 years after he had buried his son. He didn't receive the money before the burial. In fact, the money came to him 3 years after the burial of his son.
Right.
And I asked whether that money was okay. He says, no, you can't have 10,000 cedis as burial fund for a 25-year-old man. Of course, that was woefully inadequate, he explained.
Good off to take
Okay, I thank you.